You know, when you look at a globe or a map of the world, there's this comforting illusion of permanence.
Oh, absolutely. It's a very human bias.
Right. The continents just look so locked in. We treat geography like a finished painting. I mean, we build cities, we draw borders, and we navigate our lives assuming the ground beneath our feet is a fixed, unchanging canvas.
Yeah, you see a map of Africa and it looks like a massive, solid puzzle piece that has
Yeah.
finally settled into its permanent spot on the board.
Exactly.
But that assumption of stability is deeply ingrained in just how short human lifespans are compared to geological time. We just don't naturally perceive the immense, violent kinetic energy that's constantly shifting beneath us.
We see a mountain and think, well, that's forever.
Right, when in reality, the Earth's surface is more like a frozen snapshot of a churning, boiling engine.
And when you look a little closer at the science of that engine, you realize you are actually standing on a canvas that is actively being ripped apart. It's just happening in super slow motion.
Very slow motion, yes.
Today, we are taking you straight into the heart of one of the most dramatic geological crime scenes on the planet. We're diving into a really detailed April 2026 report from Science Daily and the Columbia Climate School.
Which is based on some truly groundbreaking research just published in Nature Communications.
Yeah, and our mission for this deep dive is to understand how the African continent is literally splitting apart right now. But the wild twist, and we're going to explore the mechanics of this, is how the very geological destruction tearing that landmass in two might be the single biggest reason we know so much about our own human origins.
Right. What makes this specific research so compelling is that it fundamentally bridges two fields of science that we usually treat as, completely separate chapters in a textbook.
Deep Earth geology and paleoanthropology.
Exactly. We are talking about merging tectonic plate mechanics with the evolution of early hominins.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the sheer scale of what is happening in Eastern Africa is almost hard to wrap your head around. Let's start with the anatomy of this great split.
Good place to start.
We are focusing on a region called the Turkana Rift. For you listening, picture a massive geographical scar stretching roughly 500 kilometers across Kenya and Ethiopia.
And to visualize the forces at play here, you have to zoom out and look at the tectonic plates themselves. You have the massive African tectonic plate on one side and the Arabian and Somali plates on the other.
Like two giant rafts floating next to each other.
Right. And beneath those rigid plates, the Earth's mantle is churning. Hot rock is rising from deep within the Earth, hitting the bottom of the crust and spreading outward.
Oh, wow.
And that convection is actively grabbing these massive continental plates and dragging them in opposite directions. They're literally divorcing.
Divorcing, I like that. And the data actually reveals the exact speed of the separation. In the Turkana region, the African and Somali plates are moving apart at about 4.7 millimeters per year.
Which, doesn't sound like much.
Right, 4.7 millimeters might not sound like a blockbuster disaster movie. It's roughly the speed your fingernails grow. But in geological terms, considering the billions of tons of solid rock involved, that is a relentless, unstoppable physical force.
It's an immense amount of stored energy. And as that separation occurs, the crust of the Earth doesn't just cleanly snap like a dry twig. It undergoes a process called rifting.
Which means it stretches, right?
Exactly. The crust stretches sideways, the physical strain causes the surface to buckle, to fault, and to crack. And that creates these vertical pathways for magma from the mantle to start creeping upward.
But not all rifts actually succeed in splitting a continent, do they? Sometimes they just sort of stretch, lose momentum, and stop.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
But what the lead author of the study, Christian Rowan, who's a PhD student at Columbia University's Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, what his team found is that the Turkana Rift is way further along in the breaking process than anyone realized.
The findings there were staggering.
Yeah, the crust there is shockingly thin.
What's fascinating here is that along the center of the Turkana Rift, the Earth's continental crust is now only about 13 kilometers thick.
Wow. Only 13 kilometers.
Right. And to put the severity of that into perspective, if you move just a bit further away from the center of the rift, the crust goes back to being more than 35 kilometers thick.
That is a dramatic drop-off in structural integrity.
It really is.
And the research uses this brilliant analogy to describe what's happening mechanically. They call it necking.
Necking, yes.
Like if you've ever pulled apart a thick piece of saltwater taffy, you know how the middle stretches out and gets really thin and narrow right before it finally snaps in two?
Yep.
That narrowed, stretched center is the neck. And that is exactly what the African continent is doing right now.
And the physical mechanics of that necking phase create a rather aggressive, self-reinforcing feedback loop. As Christian Rowan outlines, the thinner the crust gets in that center point, the weaker it becomes.
Which makes sense.
Right, and because it's weaker, it offers far less resistance to the tectonic forces pulling on it. Furthermore, a thinner crust means the incredibly hot, molten mantle is now sitting much closer to the surface.
Oh, so it's heating up the rock from below.
Exactly. That heat warms the remaining 13 kilometers of rock, making it more pliable, which helps promote even more stretching. It essentially accelerates its own destruction.
That's crazy. And the study also mentions evidence of an earlier failed rifting episode in this very same area millions of years ago.
Yes, it did.
It didn't lead to a full continental split back then, but it left a hidden mark. To me, it sounds exactly like when you want to tear a thick piece of cardboard in half perfectly, so you take a box cutter and score a deep line down the middle first.
That's a great analogy.
You don't cut all the way through, but you've compromised it. That first failed rift basically scored the continent, leaving the crust perfectly primed and weakened to split along that exact same path today.
Right. That initial failed rifting episode introduced millions of microfractures and structural weaknesses into the region. It set the stage perfectly.
Wow.
In fact, Ann Bessel, a geophysicist at Lamont and co-author of the study, notes that because of this localized weakness, we have now reached a critical threshold of crustal breakdown. The Earth is taking the path of least resistance.
Which naturally leads to a pretty big logistical question, I think.
What's that?
Well, if this necking is happening deep underground and the plates are only moving 4.7 millimeters a year, how on earth did scientists actually figure out it's at a critical breaking point?
Right.
It's not like you can just take a giant tape measure, dig a hole 13 kilometers deep,
Yeah.
and verify the thickness, you know?
No. They have to rely on the science of the subterranean. To make this discovery, Rowan and his colleagues had to essentially listen to the internal acoustics of the Earth.
Listen to the Earth.
Yeah, they utilized a rare, highly specialized set of seismic data. This was a major collaborative effort utilizing data from industry partners alongside the Turkana Basin Institute.
Which, for anyone who follows paleoanthropology, is a legendary institution.
It really is.
The Turkana Basin Institute was founded by the late Richard Leakey, primarily to study human fossils. So it's fascinating to see this renowned paleontology hub being utilized for deep Earth geophysics.
It speaks to how interconnected these scientific disciplines are becoming. The way researchers use this seismic data is an elegant application of physics.
How does it work?
They measure how sound waves, often generated by natural earthquakes or controlled vibrations, travel through the various underground layers.
Okay.
The fundamental principle is that acoustic energy travels at different speeds depending on the density and temperature of the material it's passing through. Sound waves move very quickly through cold, dense, solid rock.
Right.
But when those waves hit fractured rock, compacted sediment, or pockets of hot rising magma, they slow down and scatter in specific, predictable patterns.
So it's like taking a seismic ultrasound of the Earth to map out its skeletal structure. You can see exactly where the solid bone ends and the softer tissue begins.
That's a perfect way to put it. By analyzing those complex acoustic signatures and combining them with other imaging methods, the team was able to map the massive sedimentary structures hidden underground.
And calculate the exact, terrifyingly thin depth of the crust beneath the rift.
Exactly. And through that mapping, they were able to construct the immense timeline of this event. The data lays it out clearly. This rift didn't just start yesterday.
Right. The Turkana Rift actually began its initial stretching roughly 45 million years ago.
Yes.
But the necking phase, that intense taffy-pulling thinning of the crust, is much more recent. They estimate that aggressive stretching started after a period of widespread, violent volcanic eruptions around 4 million years ago.
And that timeline stretches forward, too. Because the crust has reached this critical threshold, we are currently observing the prelude to a completely new geographical reality for the planet.
Wait.
Millions of years from now, this region will enter a terminal phase known as oceanization.
Oceanization. Okay, so we aren't just talking about a big lake forming. We are talking about the Earth's mantle physically tearing open to generate brand new oceanic crust right in the middle of Kenya.
It is the ultimate endgame of a continental rift. As the crust eventually thins to the point of completely breaking, the massive drop in pressure will allow magma to surge up through the fractures.
And that forms the new floor.
Right, when that magma hits the surface and cools, It doesn't form continental rock.
Yeah.
It forms heavy, dense basalt, the exact same material that makes up the bottom of our oceans.
Wow.
And as the land separates and drops further, water from the Indian Ocean, which currently sits to the north, will eventually flood in and fill the void.
Okay, wait, I just want to pause right here and let the scale of that settle for a second.
Sure.
Wait, so you are telling me that if you stand in the middle of the Turkana Rift right now, you are essentially standing on the beach of an ocean that won't exist for millions of years, or the future floor of it.
The science firmly points to that outcome. The ground you would be standing on is destined to be the bottom of the sea.
That is wild.
And that is why this study is sending ripples through the geological community. The Turkana Rift is the first known active continental rift currently undergoing this specific, measurable necking process.
So it's unique.
Completely. It is a completely unique geological laboratory. Co-author Fuller and Colable points out that we now have a front-row seat to observe a critical rifting phase.
A front row seat to a continent literally tearing itself in half.
And observing this active phase gives us the Rosetta Stone for understanding our planet's past.
How so?
Well, this exact necking process fundamentally shaped all the rifted margins across the world throughout Earth's history. By studying the physics of Turkana today, scientists can accurately model the ancient tectonic processes that separated South America from Africa millions of years ago.
Oh, I see.
And these tectonic shifts dictate where oceans flow, how ocean currents circulate heat, and consequently, how global weather systems operate.
Everything is connected.
Exactly. As Ann Basel notes, we can use that deep knowledge of the past to build better predictive models for what is going to happen to our planet's climate in the future.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's pivot from that future ocean and go back to that deep past.
Let's do it.
Because there's a very specific date in this geological timeline that should make anyone who knows anything about human history sit bolt upright.
4 million years ago.
Yes, the researchers noted that the aggressive necking phase and the widespread volcanic eruptions that kicked it off happened around 4 million years ago, and that perfectly overlaps with something else happening in East Africa.
The emergence of early hominins, our human ancestors.
Exactly. And the Turkana Rift isn't just famous for shifting tectonic plates. It is arguably the most famous paleoanthropological site on Earth.
It's unparalleled.
According to the Columbia Climate School report, this exact region has produced more than 1,200 hominin fossils from the past 4 million years. We are talking about famous discoveries like Turkana Boy and crucial fossils of Homo habilis and Homo erectus.
Wait.
That single region accounts for about 1/3 of all early human fossils ever found in the entire continent of Africa.
And for decades, the dominant narrative among many scientists has been relatively straightforward based on that sheer volume of evidence.
Because we find so many fossils there, it must be the center of it all.
Precisely. Because we find so many early human fossils in this one specific area, this area must have been the crucial center of human evolution. The working logic was that there was something biologically, nutritionally, or environmentally unique about the Turkana region that made it the literal birthplace of humanity.
But hold on a second. I need to push back on that traditional logic based on what we're learning today.
Okay, let's hear it.
I get that they found a ton of fossils there. But if early humans were walking all over the African continent, hunting and migrating, why aren't we finding massive piles of their bones in the Sahara or down in South Africa? A skeleton is a skeleton. Shouldn't they survive wherever an early human happened to fall?
That is the exact question this new geological data helps answer.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to the brutal chemistry and physics of fossilization.
Bones don't just naturally become fossils, right?
Right. Bones do not easily become fossils at all. If an early human died on a normal African savanna, scavengers would scatter the bones, the sun would bleach them, and microbial decay would turn them to dust within a few decades.
Just gone.
Exactly. For a bone to survive for 4 million years, it has to be buried almost immediately in an oxygen-free environment to stop that decay.
Oh. And that ties perfectly back to the breaking of the continent. The researchers suggest that after those volcanoes erupted 4 million years ago, the onset of that necking process caused the land in the rift to sink.
Yes. The scientific term is subsidence. When you stretch the Earth's crust, you are taking the same amount of mass and spreading it over a wider area. It thins out.
The taffy again?
Right. Because it is thinner and less buoyant, Gravity pulls it deeper into the dense mantle below.
Hmm.
The ground, it literally drops, creating a massive sinking basin.
And as that basin sank, water flowed into it, carrying dirt and mud. It rapidly filled with fine-grained sediments.
And fine-grained sediment accumulating quickly in a sunken basin is the absolute perfect recipe for preserving bone. It rapidly entombs the remains, seals off the oxygen, blocks out the scavengers, and prevents the weather from grinding the bones to dust over millennia.
So what does this actually mean for the history books, then? Are you telling me that Turkana might not actually be the unique cradle of humanity we always thought it was, but rather it's just the place with the Earth's best geological filing cabinet?
That is the exact paradigm shift this paper is proposing. In paleontology, there is a fundamental concept known as preservation bias.
Preservation bias.
Yes, it is the realization that our fossil record isn't a perfect reflection of where animals lived. It is only a reflection of where the environmental conditions allowed their bones to survive for millions of years.
That completely flips the script. I mean, it means we've been looking at this incredible fossil record and confusing the camera for the actor.
That's a great way to think about it.
We thought Turkana was the star of the show, the only place early humans were thriving, but it was really just the only place where the film was rolling to record them.
Christian Rowan summarizes the implications of this beautifully. He states, "The conditions were right to preserve a continuous fossil record.
Simple as that.
The Turkana Rift might not have been uniquely important as the specific site where human ancestors evolved. Instead, the geological conditions driven entirely by a continent violently ripping itself apart and sinking created the perfect anaerobic mud trap to record and preserve their history."
Now, as the report notes, this idea currently remains a hypothesis, but it blows the doors wide open for entirely new avenues of research.
It really does. Rowan points out that other researchers can now take these specific geological findings and explore these ideas further.
Right.
They can take this data about crustal thinning and subsidence, feed it into complex tectonic models, couple those with ancient climate models, and really start to map out how the physical shifting of the Earth directly influenced the environment our ancestors evolved in.
It forces us to stop looking at human evolution as a purely biological process.
Exactly. Our ancestors didn't evolve in a vacuum. They evolved on a dynamic, fracturing surface.
Right, because understanding the precise timing of this rifting helps us understand when lakes formed, when mountain barriers rose to block rain.
And how those shifting landscapes forced early humans to adapt, migrate, or die.
It's just staggering to think about the interconnectedness of it all. To wrap this up for you listening, think about the incredible journey we just went on.
It's a lot to take in.
We started by looking at a piece of the African continent where the crust is a terrifyingly thin 13 kilometers. We learned about the mechanical feedback loop of necking and how the Earth is actively stretching itself out like saltwater taffy.
Setting the stage for the mantle to tear open and a brand new ocean to flood the region millions of years from now.
Exactly. We explored how scientists use the acoustic physics of seismic sound waves to map a hidden subterranean world, revealing a 45-million-year-old story of a failed rift that compromised the continent, only to return millions of years later to finish the job.
And most incredibly, we saw how that very process of geological destruction, the slow gravitational sinking of the land, the violent volcanic eruptions, the tearing of the crust, created the exact fine-grained sedimentary conditions needed to preserve the bones of our earliest ancestors.
The destruction of the continent is the very mechanism preserving the memory of where we came from. I mean, it completely recontextualizes the 1,200 human fossils we found there. It moves us from a story of a unique cradle of life to a story of a perfectly timed time capsule.
It is a profound irony that the violent breaking of a world is precisely what allows us to read its history.
It really is.
And that raises an important question, one that I think is fascinating to ponder as we consider the immense, almost incomprehensible timelines we've discussed today.
What's that?
Well, if the violent early stages of this massive continental destruction 4 million years ago perfectly preserved the fossils of early humans, what parts of our modern world are currently sinking into fine-grained sediments right now?
Oh, wow.
Millions of years in the future, when that new ocean has fully formed over the Turkana Rift and new seafloor is paved over the landscape, what pieces of us will the Earth have perfectly preserved for whatever comes next to discover?